Back to the crisis in Calais now, and another night has passed with hundreds of migrants trying to cross the channel into the UK. On this side of the water, lorries are still being queued up on a motorway in Kent, and the UK and French governments have both pledged to work together to help strengthen the border by providing more funding and more officers for patrols. This morning, the Prime Minister will chair a meeting of the Cobra Emergency Committee. David Cameron warned that the UK will not become a safe haven for migrants.
This is very testing, I accept that, because you've got a swarm of people coming across the Mediterranean, seeking a better life, wanting to come to Britain, because Britain has got jobs, it's got a growing economy, it's an incredible place to live, but we need to protect our borders by working hand in glove with our neighbours, the French, and that's exactly what we're doing.
But the Prime Minister's words were heavily criticised, particularly his description of a swarm of migrants. One of those who have condemned his comments is the First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon.
Well, I completely deprecate David Cameron's choice of language. These are human beings that are fleeing dreadful circumstances and that are crying out for help. Now, the UK borders, of course, have to be secure, but I think the UK would be better at seeking to play its part in a coordinated and comprehensive UK plan of action to deal with the migrant crisis.
Nicola Sturgeon there. So why are so many people trying to flee across the border? The French-Algerian journalist Nabila Ramdani joins me now. Good morning to you.
Hello, good morning.
Hello, thank you for joining us. First of all, just to answer that question, why are we seeing such an impact on the Channel Tunnel on Calais just now? Where are these people coming from?
Well, essentially, I mean, I visited the Calais camp many times over, over the years, and essentially you have people coming from all parts of the world, especially, well, war-torn countries or people coming from troubled parts of the world, and most of them come from West Africa, Africa, or indeed Middle Eastern country, which are going through turmoil, to put it mildly. And they are essentially desperate people who come from devastated countries and who are looking to go and live in secure and prosperous society to start afresh, effectively.
And a secure and prosperous society, I suppose that could mean that the UK. Why is the UK so attractive? Why not stay in France? People talk about the benefit system here. Is it really that different from what is available in France?
Well, yes, absolutely, and that's precisely why, we've heard the French government effectively blaming the British for what's happening, and they're effectively blaming Britain for being a more liberal country, a more tolerant country, which has a much more generous and indeed accessible benefit system. The French have worked out the idea that the ease with which migrants can claim asylum in Britain or slip into the black economy encourages thousands to make the journey across the UK. And they argue that if Britain was a tougher place, then migrants would not be appearing in such huge numbers. France nominally also runs an efficient asylum system, but there are in fact massive bureaucratic delays and indeed deportations. France is a much more intolerant country, and even the ruling Socialist Party is exceptionally reactionary when it comes to immigration, and it's much harder to get benefits in France.
It's interesting to hear that. I mean, some people have been describing this as a crisis. What do you think can be done in the short term, at least? And the way you've been describing it, I mean, it's obviously very much a British problem as well as a French problem too.
Well, absolutely, and that's why we're seeing, politicians on both sides of the channel taking this matter extremely seriously. I personally think that this is a disastrous stalemate, and there is no sensible solution. I mean, everything has to be worked out in the long term. This problem goes on year after year, and And in the end, we are currently dealing with up to 5,000 migrants in Calais, and they have absolutely nowhere to go. There have been a few solutions that have been envisaged in the past, which clearly haven't worked. The French often find out that deporting the migrants is a complete waste of time and money, as they just come back again. Of course, you can't lock them all up, as it's inhumane and fundamentally against their human rights. The British seem to be obsessed about building fences, but in the long run, fences do not solve anything, and they do not guarantee the safety as well of those migrants. And one of the things that we tend to overlook in this debate is that we're essentially talking about young men, women, and indeed children who should be in the prime of life, but who are dying as they try to make this hugely perilous journey through the Channel Tunnel. And I think that the absolute priority of politicians should be to stop people from dying when they embark on such journeys.
If the situation gets further out of control, do you think the French government might just abdicate responsibility for the border checks that they are doing as a favour to the UK government and just say, look, actually, you can do them in Dover if you want, we're fed up with this?
I think the French Interior Minister, Bernard Cazeneuve, has already pretty much said as much. He has written to Eurotunnel accusing them of not doing enough. Cazeneuve is prepared to throw money and indeed police at the problem. But again, the overwhelming feeling is that the French are blaming the British for what's happening. There has been a lot of diplomacy going on between the two countries. The French and the British know that they have to work together. But as with all problems which can't be solved, everybody's pretty much secretly blaming each other.
And what do you make of the Prime Minister's use of the word swarm? He was being heavily criticised for that, but I suppose he wanted to maybe take a tough stance.
I think it's important to point out that the Prime Minister referred to a swarm of people, which rather negates the argument that he was dehumanising anybody. Politicians come up with all kinds of strange and potentially offensive words during live interviews, but I do think that all this has been rather overblown. That said, there is a very fair argument that some sections of right-wing opinion, including conservative politicians, are failing to view the people caught up in the Calais situation with the dignity and respect that they deserve. But of course, the Prime Minister wants to be seen to be taking this issue extremely seriously. He wants to be appearing to be doing something about it, and hence the Cobra emergency meeting that he'll be holding this morning.
Nabila Ramdani, thank you very much for joining us.